Tonight on CFTK-TV News, BC's provincial housing agency is attempting to start a project in Terrace. U.S. officials vetoed a potential ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war, and Prime Minister Trudeau made a major announcement recently.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cale Maslin, and here's what's making the news in the Northwest and beyond today. Recent word has come out to reveal that BC's provincial housing agency is attempting to go through with a project in the city of Terrace. The project in question would see 35 units of supportive housing built in one lot that's vacant and two others located across from the New Mills Memorial Hospital building. But if the project is to happen, BC Housing will have to buy all of the aforementioned properties that are located on Tetrald Street across from the hospital, in part because two of them have houses on them right now. As for the vacant lot, it's privately owned on 2812 Tetrald Street by the Métis Nation British Columbia and is also the biggest of the three lots. The project's plan is to have all 35 future units be self-contained but still have items like meals and counseling available. Telqua is said to be working on solutions that would see them discover new tools to help fight against electric vehicle fires. This work idea came from the village's fire chief, Travis Wall, who not too long ago talked about how the number of electric vehicles in many BC communities and highways is going up. And since these vehicles mainly run on iron lithium batteries, they can catch on fire, and whenever they do, they are reportedly extremely difficult to put out. So it's been suggested that Telqua make a budget of $43,300 in order to buy battery extinguishing system technology for when these kinds of fires occur. Vanderhoof's RCMP recently got word of a case that involved both a pedestrian as well as a motor vehicle. The case in question saw earlier that day a young pedestrian be located on the Rainbow Crosswalk located near Vanderhoof's Nechako Secondary Valley Senior Secondary School when a vehicle ran over their foot. The vehicle's in question's description so far has only been said to be that of a silver Tesla 3, but that is all that is known as of right now. Local RCMP have since warned nearby residents to make sure that they are aware of their surroundings at all times to avoid such injuries. U.S. officials vetoed a UN Security Council resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in the Hamas-Israel war. The U.S. said it's not the time, arguing a resolution requires guaranteed freedom for all hostages. CTV's Adrian Gobriel has the latest.
Smoke rises as fresh Israeli airstrikes hit what the IDF has called multiple Hezbollah military positions. Though on the ground in southern Lebanon, the owner of this warehouse where 14 people were injured tells a different story, saying this is a company registered for 11 years that works with electricity generators and their maintenance, going on to allege that there is nothing hidden here. The claim that this has weapons is a lie. Fanning the flames of a wider conflict has been a concern in the region and across the world since the October 7th attack by Hamas.
Those against?
Today, the United States blocked a UN Security Council resolution that called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, as the U.S. argued for their own temporary ceasefire proposal on the condition all hostages held by Hamas are released, while warning Israel against a ground assault in the southern border city of Rafah.
Demanding an immediate, unconditional ceasefire without an agreement requiring Hamas to release the hostages will not bring about a durable peace.
The U.S. is arguing that an immediate ceasefire would jeopardize talks they're having with Egypt, Qatar, and Israel to broker a pause in the war. Aid agencies are warning that more people will die in Gaza if diplomacy continues to fail.
The children of Gaza cannot afford to wait a day any longer. And this news comes as we hear that the death toll of children in Gaza has now surpassed 12,400.
Please be seated. The controversy at the United Nations comes as the UN's top court began day 2 of a hearing that is probing Israel's historic handling of the Palestinian territories.
Wherever the egregious and offensive practices of apartheid occur, these must be called out for what they are and brought to an immediate end.
52 countries are scheduled to present decades of evidence to the International Court of Justice this week, with the majority arguing that Palestinians in the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem continue to live under Israeli occupation.
Canada has declined to speak at the ICJ hearing, citing concerns that any opinion shared by the court could lead to further polarization and hinder any chance of peace in the region. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Toronto.
In breaking news, the BC government is said to be cutting some changes that were proposed to be part of the Land Act. These possible changes had led to some contentious debates, as they have been alleged to allow First Nations to disallow any land use decision, although the provincial government has denied that claim, and another one that said they would be forced into agreements with First Nations. The reason the changes were proposed in the first place was as to make an attempt to make BC laws more in line with the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Coming up next, video of a scary robbery was recently unearthed. Welcome back. Video has surfaced of a terrifying robbery unfolding at a Surrey jewelry store. Masked criminals descended on the store, leading to a chaotic confrontation. The owner was shot several times, but he still tried to stop the thieves. CTV's Michelle Bernoro has more and a warning. Some may find the upcoming video disturbing.
Mazhar Kawasme is trying to get this Guildford area store back in order after violence erupted here Sunday just before closing.
It's horrible. It shouldn't happen.
This video appears to show the final moments of an attempted robbery at Newer Jewelry Store. Kawasme says the owner was shot 4 times, twice inside the store and twice outside.
He's lucky to be alive. I mean, to be shot from zero distance 4 times, that's a miracle.
The store manager wasn't there when it happened, but says he's been told that as a woman was leaving the locked store, she held the door.
At that moment, 5 guys with 2 guns on them, they came in the store and they were trying to threaten everyone.
He says as the owner of the store tried to stop the masked thugs, a fight broke out. A female employee was also attacked.
They obviously were panicking. They couldn't get away with anything.
He says they also couldn't get out the door and smashed the window to escape. The owner went after them.
He probably wasn't aware that the fact he's shot. You know, at this point, sometimes your adrenaline will be at the highest. They came back to shoot him again. It's just insane.
Once our officer arrived on scene, they found one victim that had suffered from gunshot wounds. This victim was taken to hospital. He still remains in the hospital. He has non-life-threatening injuries.
The manager says the victim has already undergone 1 surgery and will require another as he recovers from this horrific shooting. Meanwhile, the manager says police have seized video surveillance from inside the store. So far, Mounties say no arrests have been made.
These types of events, they are well organized by the suspects. They have obviously done their workup on this particular store.
The store will be upping its security measures. The manager hoping those responsible for this are brought to justice. Michelle Bernoro, CTV News, Surrey.
With several vacancies on the Vancouver Police Board, the 3 local First Nations are making their case that their members should get a seat at the table. As CTV's Ben Milger reports, that will be up to the province, and it's hinting only the Musqueam might get an appointment.
And I call the meeting of the Vancouver Police Board to order.
The Vancouver Police Board does not have any representatives from the Squamish, Musqueam, or Tsleil-Waututh nations, despite operating on their unceded territories.
I would be supportive of having one representative appointed on the 3 nations' behalf, but I'd also be supportive of individual representing as well.
In a statement, Tsleil-Waututh councillor Charlene Alex said, "We are open to having these conversations with the Vancouver Police Department and the Vancouver Police Board to move forward in a good way for the people of Vancouver and the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. Now is the time for us to have a seat at the table." Former Vice Chair Faye Whiteman resigned suddenly over concerns about the board's chair, Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim.
There was more political interference than what I had seen previously, and from what I understood through the Police Act and the BC Police Manual that there should be.
That leaves the board with 3 vacancies, but according to the Public Safety Minister, only 1 local First Nation is likely to have a member appointed in the near future.
It is something that we have recognized that we want to have Indigenous representation. Musqueam is the nation that has a policing agreement with the City of Vancouver, and so that's what we're working on in filling that space at the present time.
The Squamish Nation points to Sanok, a community of 6,000 homes under construction at the south end of the Burrard Bridge, which will be home to many Squamish Nation members and policed by the VPD.
But I think through a new lens, this will help address some of these challenges we continue to face.
With Indigenous people disproportionately represented in the criminal justice system, many believe one solution is to have more First Nations in policing leadership. Ben Milger, CTV News, Vancouver.
More homes for middle-income earners is the recent messaging from the province. Last week, they officially launched their BC Builds program to ramp up construction, and yesterday the Prime Minister was in the province to announce billions in federal funding. CTV's Craig Krause reports.
Between 8,000 and 10,000 homes will be built here in BC. Well, that's the Prime Minister's promise as all three levels of government look to address the lack of affordable options in the province.
Putting another $2 billion from the federal government's apartment construction loan program into BC Builds.
The federal low-cost loans come a week after the provincial government announced $2 billion of provincial financing and $950 million to build middle-class homes on government land in what Victoria is calling the BC Builds program.
We have to use every resource we have, including public land, including government financing, including the nonprofit sector, including the for-profit sector, working together to deliver this housing. Nobody can do it on their own. And that's what we're doing. That's what BC Builds is all about.
A program that will look to streamline project approvals to be built between 12 and 18 months. Urgency to get shovels into the ground, something that Vancouver needs as vacancy rates remain below 1% and rent prices continue to rise.
We are finding that more and more of our people, the people that work in the city of Vancouver, are living further and further away. And for Vancouver to succeed, our people, including but not limited to school teachers and tradespeople and first responders, need to be able to live in our city.
And when it comes to pricing, the BC Builds program aims to ensure that middle-income households are spending no more than approximately 30% of their income on rent. Now the race is on to build these projects on the 20 initial sites. Craig Krause, CTV News, Vancouver.
Turning to tonight's weather, the north coast is likely to see a few clouds while the low is down at 0 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area is said to be getting a few clouds of their own while their low goes down to -2 degrees. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District is likely to be partly cloudy while they have an even lower low of -12 degrees. On the north coast, their next week or so is likely to include sun at the beginning before being pretty much all rain and/or snow and flurries after, while the high shifts from 6 to 3 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, the week for them should see also sun at the start with rain and snow, plus flurries after, with the high moving from 6 to 0 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes districts, the upcoming week is supposed to include mostly flurries and rain also after a sunny start, while their high bounces from 2 to -1 degree. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is slippery sections, utility work, fog patches, bits of maintenance, and a vehicle recovery, plus the Usk ferry is out of service and the cable car is in effect. Highway 37 has some slippery sections too, while also having compact snow, some slippery sections on the Nishka Highway, and the Telegraph Creek Road has slippery sections of its own. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, Canadian citizens have questions about imported beef. Welcome back. Law enforcement agencies announced that they took down some hackers behind ransomware attacks that have crippled targets around the world, including here in Canada. The operation targeted Lockbit, linked to thousands of attacks. CTV's Genevieve Beauchemin reports.
The front page of the dark website of Lockbit was seized. International law enforcement allies now claim control of the platform, used to extort thousands of victims around the globe.
In addition to disrupting the Lockbit ransomware group at every level, we are also providing assistance and support to victims of the largest and most deployed ransomware variant around the world.
Ransomware attackers typically encrypt data on infected systems and demand payment for the decryption key. Law enforcement agencies say they've hacked the hackers and also developed software that could unlock the data of several Lockbit victims. Those include hospitals, schools, global companies.
They managed to not just take over the website, but also publish those decryption keys that victims are able to use to regain control of their information. So it's a big deal.
Canada first uncovered a Lockbit infection within its borders in March 2020. By 2022, it was rampant, responsible for almost 1 out of 4 ransomware attacks in this country. Lockbit claimed responsibility for the February 2023 attack on the bookstore chain Indigo, but also for taking data belonging to Toronto's Sick Kids Hospital during the 2022 holiday season. The hackback campaign by law enforcement agencies also led to the arrest of 2 suspected operatives in Poland and Ukraine and to the indictment of 2 Russian men.
But there's still a lot of work for investigators to do. Last year, ransomware gangs posted the data of more than 4,000 people online. Genevieve Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
About 80% of the beef sold in Canada is raised by Canadian farmers, with about the other 20% imported from other countries. Recently, there's been some concern on social media regarding ungraded beef from Mexico, with some shoppers not exactly sure what that means. CTV's Pat Foran reports.
With the high price of groceries, more consumers are skipping the meat aisle, but now they may have a chance to buy cuts of beef that could be slightly less expensive. However, on social media, some shoppers are concerned and posting photos of ungraded Mexican beef, wondering exactly what it is.
Essentially, you're looking at a product that is safe to eat. It is edible, but you don't necessarily know what you're getting, really, from a quality perspective.
Canada Beef says some retailers are importing Mexican beef because it may be cheaper than Canadian meat products. It says that grading is a quality indicator and does not measure food safety. But when you buy beef produced in Canada, the grading system gives you a better idea of what you're getting.
The highest grade is Canada Prime, followed by Canada AAA and Canada AA.
Beef from Mexico may also have a different taste and texture because of the type of livestock used to produce beef.
In Canada, we use primarily European cattle genetics, which are very well known for their beef quality and taste. As you go further south, you have to use other types of cattle to manage the heat.
Sylvain Charlebois says when meat is ungraded, it could be of a lower quality.
Typically, ungraded beef from Mexico would come from older bulls or cows.
CTV News reached out to Loblaws, and a spokesperson said all imported fresh meat, including beef, is inspected and approved by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and that countries outside of North America often use a different grading system, which is why it is labeled in Canada as ungraded, but it is always quality beef. Charlebois says as grocers try to keep prices down at the meat counter, you can expect to see more Mexican beef on store shelves.
And now we turn our attention to the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is up 3/100ths of a cent. The price of gold is down $5.50. Oil is up 87 cents. Natural gas is up 22 cents. Aluminum is down $3.50. In Toronto, the TSX is down 45.15 points. The Venture Index is down 1.60. In New York, the Dow Jones is up 48.44, and Nasdaq is down 49.91. Still ahead is a police chase involving a stolen tow truck. Welcome back. One traffic accident went from bad to worse when a stolen tow truck led to a police on a wild chase. After 4 vehicles were involved in a crash in Maryland, one of the drivers fled and took a stolen tow truck on a destructive hour-long demolition derby-style chase through rush hour traffic. The stolen tow truck weaved through cars, striking power lines and bashing into at least 13 other vehicles during its escape. Several minor injuries were reported, and after an hour, the chase finally came to an end with the help of a GPS device on board the hijacked truck. Statistics Canada says Vancouver residents who don't own their own homes face great financial pressure that affects their mental health and perceptions of their quality of life. The agency said survey results in previous years show renters have more often reported lower quality of life than homeowners, especially in Vancouver and Toronto. Survey results also indicated that Vancouverites are significantly less likely to report having good or excellent mental health than those living elsewhere in BC. The agency last said nationally just over 51% of Canadians said they had high overall life satisfaction, compared with about 48% of BC residents on average. Protesters waving some Khalistan flags gathered outside of the Indian consulate in downtown Vancouver back on Saturday to mark 8 months since the shooting death of a religious leader outside a place of worship that happened in Surrey. Dozens of protesters chanted on loudspeakers and some even burned Indian flags, as last fall Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stunned observers when he told the House of Commons that the murder of Surrey's Hardeep Singh Nijjar could potentially be linked to the Indian government. Nijjar was a supporter of the separatist movement seeking independence for the Punjab region of India, where the Sikh religion is most dominant. That's all of our news for now. From everyone here at CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin, and thank you for watching.